All right, let's talk about the unsung heroes humming away deep inside your car's engine, the timing belt and the timing chain. Now, these are the components that make the difference between a smooth ride and a catastrophic, wallet-destroying failure. And believe me, their story has a twist you will absolutely not see coming.
I mean, really think about that for a second. Inside your engine, you have thousands of controlled explosions happening every single minute. You've got pistons flying up and down, valves snapping open and shut at incredible speeds. So what on earth keeps all these metal parts from smashing into each other and turning the whole thing into a useless block of metal? Well, the answer is perfect precision timing.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the engine's secret dance, what timing is and why it's so important. Then we'll dive into the age of metal to see the first solutions engineers came up with. After that, a quiet revolution that changed everything. Then it's the big one, the belt versus chain showdown. And finally, we'll take a look at what the future holds for engine timing.
Okay, so let's get into that secret dance. Before we can even begin to compare a timing belt and a timing chain, we really need to understand the fundamental problem they were both invented to solve. It's like this perfectly choreographed mechanical ballet happening right under your hood.
The easiest way to think about it is like an orchestra conductor. You have the crankshaft down at the bottom, which is being turned by the pistons. That's your rhythm section. Then you have the camshaft up at the top, opening and closing the valves. That's your melody. If the conductor, your timing system, messes up and they fall out of sync, the orchestra doesn't just sound bad. It violently self-destructs.
And this four-stroke cycle is that dance in action, step by step. Intake stroke, the piston goes down, so the intake valve has to be open to let fuel and air in. Compression stroke, the piston comes back up, so both valves have to be slammed shut. Any little mistake in this sequence, and the whole system just collapses. The timing belt or chain is what keeps this perfect sequence happening thousands of times a minute, without fail.
And it all comes down to this one single, non-negotiable ratio, 2 to 1. For every 2 complete rotations of the crankshaft at the bottom of the engine, the camshaft at the top must rotate exactly once. No more, no less. It is the golden rule of engine timing, and it demands a rock-solid physical connection between the top and bottom of the engine.
So, how did the first engineers create that absolutely critical link? Well, they started with what they knew best. Solid, dependable metal.
Yep, the very first engines just used a set of direct drive gears. And they were great. I mean, they were super strong, reliable, but they had some serious drawbacks. For one, they were loud, with this really distinct whining sound. They were also pretty expensive to make. But the real problem came as engines got more advanced. Engineers figured out they could get way more power by moving the camshaft up to the top of the engine in an overhead cam design. And suddenly, gears just couldn't cover that distance.
And the solution? The timing chain. You know, it looks a whole lot like the chain on your bicycle, and it basically does the same thing. It transfers rotational power over a distance. It was tough, it was strong, and it could easily connect the crankshaft and camshaft in these powerful new overhead cam engines. It was the perfect fix.
For decades, the metal timing chain was king. But then, an incredible innovation came from a place nobody in the auto world was even looking, and it started a quiet revolution.
No, you're not reading that wrong. The ancestor of the modern, high-tech timing belt wasn't designed for a roaring engine. It was designed to make a sewing machine run more quietly and smoothly. A guy named Richard Case invented this toothed rubber belt, and for sewing machines, it was a total game changer.
The journey from the sewing room to your engine bay is just fascinating. It first proved its strength in a race car back in '54, but its big break in the US came in 1966 with the Pontiac OHC6. See, Pontiac made a bet. They bet that customers cared about more than just raw power. They cared about refinement. And they marketed the car's quiet, smooth ride, a feeling made possible by that rubber belt. And guess what? They were right. By the 1980s, a quiet engine wasn't a luxury anymore, it was an expectation. And the lighter, cheaper, quieter belt completely took over the industry.
Which, of course, brings us to the great debate. The part that probably matters most if you own a car. If they both do the same job, which one is actually better? A belt or a chain?
Okay, this chart really lays out the trade-offs. Your timing belt isn't just rubber. It's this high-tech composite reinforced with stuff like Kevlar. That's why it's so quiet. But it's a wear and tear item. It absolutely has to be replaced, usually somewhere between 60,000 and 100,000 miles. A timing chain, on the other hand, is steel, it's lubricated by your engine oil, and it's designed to last the lifetime of the engine. But it's louder, more expensive to make, and here's the kicker, the chain itself might be tough, But the little plastic guides and tensioners that keep it tight, those can definitely wear out and fail.
And this right here is where the stakes get incredibly high, especially with something called an interference engine. Now, most modern cars have this design for one simple reason: efficiency. By letting the valves and pistons share the same cylinder space, just at different times, you get higher compression, which means more power from less fuel. It's a high-reward design for sure, but it is also extremely high risk. Because if that timing belt snaps, the dance stops instantly. The pistons slam into the open valves, and your finely tuned engine becomes a very, very expensive paperweight. That's why replacing your timing belt on schedule is not a suggestion, it's absolutely critical.
So how would you even know if something's going wrong? Well, your car will usually give you some warnings. The check engine light is a big one, especially if you get codes for your cam or crank sensors being out of sync. If the timing is slipped, you might feel a really rough idle, the car might stall, or you'll just feel a major loss of power. And for chains, the classic giveaway is a distinct rattling sound coming from the front of the engine, which usually means a worn-out tensioner or guide.
But you know, this whole battle between belts and chains, it's actually not over, not by a long shot. In fact, the industry is still evolving, and the lines between the two are starting to get pretty blurry.
You'd think that's where the story ends, right? But it's not. After decades of belts being the go-to, we are seeing a massive comeback for the timing chain. A big reason for this is modern engine design. You have all these smaller, high-compression, turbocharged engines that put an incredible amount of stress on every single component. And for a lot of these engines, the raw, brute force durability of a steel chain is just more important than the quietness of a rubber belt.
But then, get this. Here's the latest plot twist in the saga: the wet belt. Some people call it a belt-in-oil system. It's this wild hybrid technology that tries to give us the best of both worlds. It's a special kind of rubber belt that, just like a chain, runs inside the engine, constantly bathed in oil. The whole point is to get the quiet, efficient operation of a belt, but with the longer lifespan of a chain.
So when you put them side by side, the difference is pretty clear. By running in oil, a wet belt cuts down on friction and noise, which can lead to longer service intervals and maybe even a tiny boost in fuel economy. But, and this is a big but, there's a new catch. Its lifespan is now completely tied to the quality of your engine oil. Use the wrong oil or wait too long between oil changes, and you could cause the belt itself to break down. Plus, you can't just pop off a plastic cover to check on it like you can with a regular dry belt.
Now you might be thinking, hey, with electric cars becoming so popular, aren't these things on their way out? But surprisingly, the exact opposite is true. The market for timing belts and chains is actually projected to grow by over $1 billion. Why? Well, it's driven by things like advanced hybrid engines that still need them, people are keeping their cars on the road a lot longer, and there's a huge aftermarket for replacements. Which really leaves us with one last big question. We're obviously in this huge transitional period for cars. So is this the final chapter for a technology that's been around for over a century, soon to be made obsolete by the electric motor? Or are these crazy new wet belts and advanced chains a sign that the finely tuned dance of the internal combustion engine still has a few more moves left? The engine's secret heartbeat, it seems, is still evolving.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more How Meets History.